The kitchen was gone by the end of the first week. Cabinets torn out, countertops removed, the old tile floor jackhammered down to the subfloor, the plumbing capped, the old appliances hauled away, a wall opened up to the studs exactly as the plans had called for. It looked like progress. It was supposed to look like progress. I had paid Dominic $15,000 up front, half of a $30,000 kitchen renovation. He had asked for 50% to order materials and cover the demolition and the first phase of the work, and that had seemed reasonable, and I had paid it. The demolition happened in week 1, then Dominic stopped showing up. Week 2, he said there was a delay with the cabinet supplier. Week 3, he said he was finishing another job and would be back Monday. He was not back Monday. Week 4, his calls started going to voicemail. Week 5, the voicemail was full. I had no kitchen. I had a room with bare studs and a capped water line and a subfloor, and I had paid $15,000 for it, and the man I had paid had vanished. I was washing dishes in the bathtub. My family was eating off paper plates, and every estimate I got from other contractors to finish the job started at $25,000, because now they had to finish someone else's abandoned work, which cost more than starting clean. I had paid $15,000 for a demolished kitchen and a disappearing act. Then, one night at the kitchen table that no longer had a kitchen around it, I pulled out the contract Dominic and I had signed. I read all 6 pages. On page 4, there was a paragraph he clearly did not think I would ever read. My name is Tony Russo. I am 44 years old and I run a small auto parts distribution business in Dallas. I am not a lawyer and I am not a contractor, but I run a business, and running a business for 15 years teaches you one thing above all others. Get it in writing and read what you signed. When I hired Dominic for the kitchen renovation, I did the thing I do with every vendor my business deals with. I insisted on a written contract, not a handshake, not a one-line invoice, a real contract that spelled out the scope of work, the total price, the payment schedule, and the timeline. Dominic had one. He used a contract template for his business, a decent one actually, probably drafted by an attorney at some point. He filled in the details, we both signed it, and I saved my copy in the folder where I keep every important document. I will be honest, I did not read all 6 pages closely when I signed it. I read the scope, the price, and the payment terms. The rest I skimmed. It looked standard. When Dominic vanished with my $15,000, I went back and read all 6 pages closely for the first time. And page 4 changed everything. The contract had a section titled Performance and Default. I had skimmed past it when I signed. Now I read it word by word. The section said, contractor agrees to commence work within the agreed timeline and to pursue the work to completion with reasonable diligence. In the event contractor abandons the project, defined as ceasing work for a period of 14 consecutive days without written justification and without reasonable cause, contractor shall be in material breach of this agreement. 14 consecutive days. Dominic had ceased work for over 3 weeks. No written justification, no reasonable cause. By the definition in his own contract, he had abandoned the project and was in material breach. The section continued, in the event of abandonment, contractor shall refund all payments made for work not performed and shall be liable for any additional costs incurred by client to complete the work using a replacement contractor up to the value of the original contract. I read that twice. Refund all payments for work not performed and liable for the additional cost of a replacement contractor to finish the job up to the contract value. I had paid $15,000. The demolition that had actually been performed was worth, by every estimate I would later get, about $3,000. That meant roughly $12,000 of my payment was for work not performed. And the replacement contractors were quoting $25,000 to finish against an original contract of $30,000. The extra cost over what the remaining work should have cost was real, documented, and, under page 4, Dominic's liability. The contract Dominic had drafted to protect himself contained the exact language that made him responsible for abandoning the job. He had not expected me to read page 4. I read page 4. Then I built the file. I am a businessman. When something goes wrong with a vendor, I document. So I documented. First the timeline, the signed contract with its date, the payment record showing the $15,000 transferred with the date, photographs of the demolished kitchen, bare studs, capped plumbing, subfloor, with timestamps. A log of every attempt to contact Dominic, the texts, the calls, the dates, the full voicemail box. The text where he claimed a supplier delay, and the one where he promised to return Monday and did not. Second, the proof of abandonment. The contract defined abandonment as 14 consecutive days without work or written justification. My log showed over 3 weeks. I had it documented to the day. Third, the damages. I got 3 written estimates from licensed contractors to complete the abandoned work. All 3 were in writing, all 3 itemized, all 3 started around $25,000 and noted explicitly that the premium was due to completing another contractor's abandoned demolition. I had each one explain in writing the value of the work Dominic had actually performed, roughly $3,000 versus what I had paid him. Fourth, I researched my options. I looked up the Texas residential construction laws and the state's contractor regulations. I learned that contractor abandonment after taking payment can constitute not only breach of contract but, depending on the circumstances and intent, may rise to theft or fraud under Texas law when a contractor takes payment and fails to perform. I learned I could file a complaint with the state and pursue the matter in court. I learned about the small claims in civil court thresholds and where my $15,000 fell. Then I found Dominic. He had stopped answering my calls, but a business has an address, a registered agent, and a paper trail. His company was registered with the state. I had a current address for service. I did not file in court first. I sent a letter first, a specific one. I had an attorney drafted because a letter on attorney letterhead is read differently than a text message. It cost me $300 for the attorney's time. It was the best $300 I spent. The letter was addressed to Dominic and his company at the registered address. It said, "This letter concerns the renovation contract dated date, under which you received a payment of $15,000. Pursuant to Section 4, Performance and Default, of the contract you drafted and signed, you have abandoned the project as defined therein, having ceased work for over 3 weeks without written justification or reasonable cause. This constitutes material breach." It said, "Under the terms of your own contract, you are obligated to refund all payments made for work not performed and are liable for the additional cost of completing the work with a replacement contractor, up to the contract value. The work actually performed is valued at approximately $3,000. Replacement contractor estimates to complete the abandoned work begin at $25,000. It said, "We are demanding a refund of $12,000, representing payment for work not performed within 14 days. Should you fail to respond, our client is prepared to pursue all available remedies, including civil action for breach of contract and damages, and to file a complaint with the appropriate state authorities regarding contractor abandonment, which under Texas law may carry consequences beyond civil liability." It quoted his own Section 4, word for word, from the contract he drafted. The attorney sent it certified mail. Dominic called me 6 days later. His voice on the phone was nothing like the man who had stopped answering. It was careful now. The careful voice of someone who had read a letter quoting his own contract back at him and had understood, finally, that this was not going away. Dominic said, "Tony, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I always intended to come back to the job." I said, "Dominic, you ceased work for over 3 weeks. Your contract defines that as abandonment. You're in material breach. I'm not interested in a conversation about intentions. I'm interested in the $12,000. He said, I don't have $12,000 to refund right now. The money went into materials and other jobs. I said, that's not my concern, and it's not a defense. Here's where we are. You can refund the $12,000 on a structured schedule that we put in writing, starting now, and this ends. Or I file the civil claim and the state complaint, and given that you took payment and abandoned the work, you deal with the consequences of that under Texas law, which, as my attorney's letter noted, can go beyond just paying me back. There was a long silence. Dominic said, what kind of schedule? We negotiated it on the phone, and then we put it in writing, because everything goes in writing. $12,000, $4,000 within 10 days, and $4,000 a month for the following 2 months, signed by both of us, with a clause that if he missed a payment, the full remaining balance became immediately due, and I retained the right to pursue the civil and state remedies. The first $4,000 arrived in 9 days. The second and third came on schedule. $12,000, refunded. I hired one of the licensed contractors who had given me a written estimate. The kitchen got finished, properly by someone who showed up. It cost what it cost, but $12,000 of Dominic's refund went straight back into completing the work he had abandoned. My family stopped eating off paper plates. I stopped washing dishes in the bathtub. And the contract that Dominic drafted to protect himself was the document that made him pay. I am 44 years old, and a contractor took $15,000, demolished my kitchen, and vanished. And I recovered $12,000 of it because his own contract defined exactly what he had done and what he owed for doing it. The first thing, always get a written contract and read every page before you sign. I insisted on a written contract because 15 years of business taught me to, but I skimmed it when I signed. I read the scope and the price and the payment terms, and I skimmed the rest. The rest, page 4, the performance in default section, turned out to be the most important part. Read every page before you sign, especially the sections about what happens when things go wrong. Default, abandonment, breach, refunds. Those sections are boring to read when everyone is optimistic at signing. They are the entire game when someone disappears with your money. The second thing, a payment schedule matters as much as the price. I paid 50% up front. In hindsight, that was too much. A better structure ties payments to completed milestones. Demolition complete, cabinets installed, countertops set, so that you are never far ahead of the work. If I had paid in milestones, Dominic could not have walked away with $12,000 of unperformed work. Never pay a contractor far ahead of the work performed. Tie the money to milestones and document each milestone before you release the next payment. The third thing, the contract that protects them often protects you too. Dominic drafted that contract. It was his template, his language, designed to define his obligations on his terms. But a contract runs both ways. His Section 4 defined abandonment and the refund obligation precisely, language probably written by an attorney to look professional and protect his business. That same language made him liable when he abandoned the job. When something goes wrong, read the contract the other party drafted as carefully as if you had drafted it yourself. The protections they wrote in for the normal case frequently contain the obligations that bind them in the abnormal one. I documented everything. I read page 4. I sent one letter quoting his own contract. $12,000 came back. Read page 4. Hi everyone, thank you for being here. Tell me in the comments, has a contractor ever taken your money and disappeared or left a job unfinished? Did you have a written contract and did you read all of it? I read every single one. If this story reached you today, subscribe. New story every day. Tony Russo, Dallas, Texas.